They thought she was just a rebellious teenager, trying to scam a free ride in first class. They mocked her. Hoodie ignored her ticket and dragged her out of her seat like a criminal while the whole plane watched. Officer Brock smirked as he clicked the handcuffs shut, thinking he was protecting the peace. But he didn't check the name on the manifest. He didn't know that the girl he'd just assaulted was the daughter of the man who supplied the fuel for every plane on that tarmac. One phone call didn't just free her, it grounded the entire fleet. Here is the shocking, true-to-life story of how prejudice cost an airline millions in minutes. The chaos began in silence at JFK International Airport, Terminal 4. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind of grey, miserable day that makes everyone inside the terminal a little more on edge. Flight 409, a flagship route for Vista Skies. Airlines bound for London Heathrow was already 20 minutes behind schedule. Maya Sterling, 18 years old, adjusted her noise-cancelling Bose headphones and tightened the strings of her hoodie. It was an oversized vintage Balenciaga piece, black, distressed, and costing more than most people's monthly rent, but to the untrained eye, it just looked like a baggy, worn-out sweatshirt. She kept her head down, clutching a battered leather backpack that contained a laptop worth $5,000 and a sketchbook she wouldn't sell for $1 million. Maya wasn't trying to be noticed. In fact, invisibility was her superpower. Being the daughter of Darius Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Petrodynamics, one of the largest aviation fuel suppliers in the Western Hemisphere, meant she usually traveled via private jet. But today the Gulfstream was in maintenance, and her father insisted she fly commercial to stay grounded before starting her architecture internship in London. She approached the first-class priority lane. The gate agent, a tired-looking man named Greg, barely glanced up as he scanned her digital boarding pass on her iPhone 15 Pro Max. "Seat 1A, enjoy your flight, Ms. Sterling," he mumbled, waving her through. Maya walked down the jet bridge, the cool air hitting her face. She stepped onto the plane, turning left toward the exclusive first-class cabin. It was luxurious diamond-stitched leather seats, soft ambient lighting, and the smell of expensive sanitizer. She found seat 1A, the prime spot. She tossed her backpack into the overhead bin and slid into the window seat, immediately curling her legs up and pulling out her Nintendo Switch. She just wanted to zone out. That was when Brenda walked in. Brenda Purvis was the lead flight attendant for the first-class cabin. She had been flying with Vista Skies for 25 years, and she wore her seniority like a weapon. With stiff hair-sprayed blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her cold, analyzing eyes, Brenda prided herself on keeping her cabin pristine. She was currently fluffing a pillow for Mr. Henderson, a hedge fund manager in seat 1B, who was already loudly complaining about the pre-departure beverage service. As Brenda turned, her eyes landed on Maya in seat 1A. Brenda's smile vanished. She saw the baggy hoodie. She saw the messy bun. She saw the dark skin. And in Brenda's mind, the calculation was instant. Does not belong. Brenda marched over her heels, clicking aggressively on the thin carpet. "Excuse me," Brenda said, her voice dripping with sickly sweet condescension. "Miss, you need to wait for your section to be called." Maya didn't hear her over the game music. Brenda tapped Maya's shoulder hard. Maya flinched, pulling her headphones down around her neck. "Sorry." "Did you say something?" "I said," Brenda enunciated slowly, as if speaking to a child. "General boarding is through the galley and to the right. Economy class is back there. You can't loiter in first class while waiting for your row." Maya blinked, confused. I'm not loitering. This is my seat. Brenda let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound meant to humiliate. Mr. Henderson in seat 1B looked over, an amused smirk playing on his lips. "Honey, this is first class," Brenda said, crossing her arms. "Seat 1A is a full fare ticket. Now let's see your boarding pass so I can direct you to row 40 where you belong. We have wealthy passengers trying to board, and you're blocking the aisle." Maya felt the heat rise in her cheeks. It wasn't anger yet. It was just shock. She unlocked her phone and held up the screen. "It says 1A right here. Maya Sterling." Brenda didn't even look at the screen. She looked at Maya's face. "Screenshots can be faked. I need to see the paper ticket, or I need you to move. Now." "I don't have a paper ticket. I used the app," Maya said, her voice firming up. "And I'm not moving. I paid for this seat." "You paid, or your daddy's credit card bounced." Brenda snapped, her professional mask slipping. "Listen to me, little girl. I don't have time for teenage pranks. Grab your bag and move to the back, or I will have you removed." "Check the manifest." Maya challenged, her eyes narrowing. "If you think I'm lying, check your tablet." Brenda glared at her. "I don't need to check anything to know when someone is out of place." The tension in the cabin was thick enough to choke on. Other passengers were filing in now. A couple in seats 2A and 2B. The Vanderbilt's regulars on this route were watching with wide eyes. Mr. Henderson in 1B leaned forward. "Come on, sweetheart," Henderson said to Maya, his voice oily. "Just do what the lady says. Don't hold up the flight. Some of us have business to get to." Maya ignored him, keeping her eyes locked on Brenda. "I'm not moving." Brenda's face turned a blotchy shade of red. She pressed the call button for the cockpit. A moment later, the first officer, a young man named Pilot Jacobs, poked his head out. "Problem, Brenda?" "Yes," Brenda huffed. "We have a passenger refusing to sit in her assigned seat. She's squatting in 1A and refusing to show valid proof of purchase. She's being belligerent." Maya stood up, dropping her switch on the seat. She was tall, almost as tall as Brenda. "I showed you my digital pass. You refused to look at it. I told you to check the manifest. You refused to do that too. This is harassment." Pilot Jacobs looked uncomfortable. He glanced at Maya, then at Brenda. He didn't want to delay. "Miss, if you could just show us the ticket." "I did," Maya shouted, frustration finally breaking through. She shoved her phone toward the pilot. Jacobs looked at the screen. It does say 1A, Brenda." Brenda snatched the phone from Maya's hand, startling everyone. She squinted at it, scrolling aggressively. "Glitch," she muttered. "It has to be a system glitch, or a hacked app. Look at her, Jacobs. Does she look like a full-fare first-class passenger? She's wearing a hoodie that looks like it was pulled out of a dumpster." "This is Balenciaga," Maya snapped, snatching her phone back. "And my father is going to hear about this." "Oh, the My Father card." Brenda laughed cruelly. "Who is he?" "A manager at Burger King." "Listen, I am the lead flight attendant. I have the authority to reassign seats for the safety and comfort of the cabin. You are making the other first-class passengers uncomfortable with your aggression." "I'm aggressive," Maya scoffed. "You snatched my phone. That's it," Brenda hissed. "I'm designating you as a disruptive passenger. You are now a security threat." "You're joking," Maya said, looking around for a witness. "Is anyone else seeing this?" Most passengers looked away. They didn't want trouble. They just wanted the plane to take off. Brenda turned to the pilot. "Get the air marshal on board. I want her off this flight. I'm not closing the cabin doors until she is gone. She's erratic and refuses to comply with crew instructions." Jacob sighed, clearly weak-willed, and unwilling to challenge his senior flight attendant. "Okay, Brenda, I'll call it in." Maya sat back down, her hands shaking with rage. She opened her text messages. She found the contact named Dad, private line. She typed code red, Vista Skies, flight 409, JFK. They are kicking me off because I don't look like I belong. She saw the 3 dots appear instantly. Then a single reply. "Stay calm. Keep the phone on. I'm handling it." 10 minutes later, the heavy thud of boots echoed on the jet bridge. The passengers in economy were craning their necks to see what was holding up the flight. In first class, the atmosphere was poisonous. Brenda was standing by the galley arms, crossed, looking smug. 2 police officers from the Port Authority entered, led by a man in a suit who flashed a badge. This was Air Marshal Brock. He was a mountain of a man with a buzz cut and a neck thick with muscle. He looked like he had been waiting all day for a reason to hit someone. "Who's the problem?" Brock boomed his voice, filling the small cabin. "Her." Brenda pointed a manicured finger at Maya. "Seat 1A. Refused crew instructions, physically aggressive, possible fraudulent ticket." Brock didn't ask questions. He didn't ask for Maya's side of the story. He operated on a simple heuristic. The flight attendant is the law of the sky. If she says, "You go, you go." Brock marched up to seat 1A. Maya was staring out the window, trying to keep her breathing steady. "Ma'am," Brock barked. "Get up." Maya turned slowly. "I have a valid ticket. This woman is discriminating against me because of how I look." "I don't care about your ticket," Brock said, leaning down, invading her personal space. "The captain wants you off the plane. That means you are trespassing. Grab your bag and walk, or I drag you." "I'm not trespassing." "Sing," Maya yelled. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Resistance," Brock grunted. He reached out and grabbed Maya's arm. "Don't touch me," Maya screamed, pulling back. "That's assault on a federal officer." Brock lied loudly, escalating the situation to justify his next move. He didn't wait. He yanked her out of the seat. Maya stumbled her hip, checking the armrest hard. Pain shot up her side. Before she could regain her balance, Brock twisted her arm behind her back. "Stop! You're hurting me!" Maya cried out. "Stop resisting her!" Brock shouted over her. He shoved her forward. Mr. Henderson in 1B chuckled. "About time. Get the trash out so we can fly." Brenda was beaming. She looked triumphant. "Make sure you ban her from the airline, officer. We can't have people like that threatening my crew." Brock manhandled Maya into the aisle. He pulled a pair of zip ties from his belt. "You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and interfering with a flight crew." "My father," Maya gasped, tears finally spilling over as the zip ties bit into her wrists. "My father is Darius Sterling." "Tell it to the judge," Brock sneered. He began to march her down the aisle past the economy passengers. Every head turned. People were holding up their phones. The flashes were going off like paparazzi. Maya hung her head, humiliated. She was being paraded like a felon. "Shame on you," a woman in row 12 yelled at Maya. "Just follow the rules." But a young guy in row 15 holding his phone high shouted, "She didn't do anything. I heard it from here. She just sat there." "Quiet," Brock bellowed at the passengers. "Unless you want to join her." They reached the front of the plane, heading toward the open door. The cool air of the jet bridge hit Maya's tear-streaked face. Just as Brock was about to shove her across the threshold onto the bridge, the intercom system on the plane made a screeching feedback noise. Then the pilot's voice came over the speakers, but it sounded terrified. Folks, this is the captain speaking from the flight deck. Everyone please remain seated. Flight Attendant Purvis. And the officers, please stop immediately." Brock paused, holding Maya by the collar of her hoodie. "What now?" he muttered. "We have, the captain's voice cracked. "We have an emergency stop order from the tower, and from corporate." Brock looked confused. Brenda looked annoyed. "What is he talking about?" Brenda snapped. "Get her off!" Suddenly the frantic sound of running footsteps came down the jet bridge. A man in a high-visibility vest, holding a radio that was squawking loudly, burst onto the plane, breathless. It was the airport operations director, a man named Mr. Calloway. He looked at Brock. He looked at the handcuffs on Maya. His face went pale white. "Unlock her," Calloway wheezed. "Right now. Unlock her. Back off," Brock warned. "She's in custody." "You don't understand," Calloway screamed, sweating profusely. "That is Maya Sterling. Her father just called the CEO of Vista Skies. He just pulled the fuel contracts." The cabin went silent. Even the engines, which had been humming in preparation for pushback, suddenly spooled down and whined into silence. The lights flickered. "What?" Brenda whispered. "Darius Sterling owns the fuel that is currently in this plane," Calloway said, his voice trembling. "He just revoked the credit line. He has grounded the entire Vista Skies fleet across the North American continent, effective immediately until his daughter is released and apologized to." Calloway looked at Brenda, whose arrogance was draining away, replaced by pure terror. "And he's on his way here right now." The silence that befell Flight 409 was unnatural. Usually an airplane is a living thing. The hum of the APU auxiliary power unit, the whir of air recyclers, the distinct whine of jet engines spooling. But now, as the fuel lines were remotely severed and the credit authorizations pulled from the main server, the Boeing 777 began to die. The lights in the cabin flickered once, then cut to the dim emergency strip lighting running along the floor. The air conditioning vents sputtered and stopped, and the humid, stagnant air of a rainy New York afternoon began to seep into the cabin. Calloway, the operations director, was leaning against the bulkhead, his chest heaving. He held his radio with a white-knuckled grip, listening to the cacophony of panic coming from the tower. "Calloway!" the radio screeched. "We have 12 aircraft on the taxiway requesting return to gate. Fuel trucks are abandoning their posts. Sterling Petrodynamics has issued a cease and desist on all fueling operations for Vista Skies. We are looking at a total operational freeze. What is going on down there?" Officer Brock, still gripping Maya's arm, looked confused. His world was one of physical force and immediate compliance. He didn't understand corporate warfare. He didn't understand how a single phone call could stop 100 tons of metal. "This is obstruction of justice," Brock growled, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. He gave Maya a rough shake. "I don't care who her daddy is. She broke the law." "You idiot!" Calloway screamed, losing his professional composure entirely. "There is no law. She had a ticket. I just checked the VIP logs myself. The system didn't glitch. Brenda just didn't refresh her tablet." Brenda, standing in the galley, felt her knees knock together. She scrambled for her device, her manicured fingers trembling so hard she dropped it on the floor. It clattered loudly. As she bent to pick it up, the screen illuminated. There, at the very top of the first-class manifest, highlighted in gold, a color reserved for ultra-high-value clients, was the name Sterling M. Next to it were the notes Brenda had ignored, daughter of supplier key partner. Do not disturb, priority handling. Oh God, Brenda whispered. Bile rose in her throat. You need to release her, Calloway pleaded with Brock. Right now, before he gets here. I have processed the arrest, Brock said stubbornly, his ego refusing to let him back down. I can't just unarrest someone because of a fuel contract. She goes to the precinct. Her lawyer can meet her there. I don't think that's going to happen, Maya said softly. Her voice was shaky, but her eyes were dry now. She was looking past Brock down the length of the jet bridge. The sound of heavy, rhythmic footsteps echoed from the tunnel. It wasn't running. It was a stride of purpose. Two men in dark suits appeared first, Private Security, Marge and Silent, wearing earpieces. They flanked the entrance of the plane, effectively blocking anyone from leaving. Then Darius Sterling stepped onto the aircraft. Darius was a man who commanded gravity. He was 6'3", wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than Officer Brock's annual salary. He didn't look angry. He looked like an executioner who had already signed the warrant. His face was unreadable, his eyes dark and calm, scanning the scene with terrifying precision. He didn't shout. He didn't run to his daughter. He simply stopped at the threshold of the first-class cabin, clasped his hands behind his back, and looked at Officer Brock. You are holding my daughter, Darius said. His voice was a low baritone, smooth and cold as ice, and I believe she is currently in pain. Brock puffed his chest out, trying to assert dominance over this newcomer. Sir, step back. This is a police matter. This individual is in custody for disorderly conduct. Darius finished the sentence for him. Trespassing, failing to comply with flight crew instructions. He took a slow step forward. I know the charges. I wrote the list of potential liabilities your department will face while I was in the elevator. Darius shifted his gaze to Maya. He saw the zip ties digging into her slender wrists. He saw the way she was favoring her left leg where she had hit the armrest. A muscle in his jaw jumped, the only sign of the rage boiling beneath the surface. Maya, Darius said gently, did you present your ticket? Yes, Dad, she whispered. Twice. Did you raise your voice? Only when she tried to take my phone. Did you resist arrest? No, he just grabbed me. Darius nodded slowly. He turned his eyes to Brenda. Brenda shrank back against the galley wall, wishing she could dissolve into the metal. And you, Darius said, walking past Brock, as if the police officer didn't exist, stopping inches from Brenda. You must be the flight attendant. Miss Purvis, isn't it? Brenda tried to speak, but her voice failed. She nodded jerkily. Ms. Purvis, I have a recording of the cockpit voice interactions, which streams directly to the cloud for quality assurance, a system my company paid to install on this fleet, Darius said. I heard you call my daughter a squatter. I heard you imply her ticket was purchased with a stolen card. I heard you weaponize the police against a teenage girl because you didn't think she looked like she belonged in seat 1A. I was just following protocol, Brenda stammered, tears leaking from her eyes. She was wearing a hoodie. A hoodie, Darius repeated flatly. He looked at Mr. Henderson in seat 1B, who was now pretending to read a magazine, desperate to avoid eye contact. And that man is wearing a polo shirt. Did you check his bank balance? Did you call the police on him? It was a misunderstanding, Brenda cried. Please, sir, the fuel. We need to fly. You aren't flying anywhere, Darius said. He turned back to Brock. "Officer, take those cuffs off my child. Now." "I can't do that," Brock said, though he was sweating now. "Procedure dictates." "Procedure." Darius laughed a dark, humorless sound. "Officer, let me explain your immediate future. If you do not remove those cuffs in the next 10 seconds, I will file a civil rights lawsuit against you personally, stripping you of your qualified immunity. I will sue the Port Authority for false imprisonment and assault on a minor. I will have your body cam footage on every news channel in the world by the time you get back to your precinct. You will not just lose your badge. You will lose your pension, your house, and your freedom." Darius pulled out his own phone and held it up. "I have the police commissioner on speed dial. Do you want me to call him, or do you want to uncuff her?" The cabin was dead silent. The passengers were holding their breath. Brock looked at Darius, then at the terrified Calloway, and finally at the trembling Maya. He realized he had been played by Brenda, but he also realized he was out of his depth. Brock swallowed his pride. He reached into his belt, pulled out a pair of wire cutters, and snipped the zip ties. Maya rubbed her wrists, wincing. Darius was at her side instantly, his demeanor shifting from shark to father. He inspected the red welts on her skin. "Broken skin," Darius murmured. He looked at Brock. "Assault causing bodily harm. Add that to the list." "I did my job," Brock muttered, backing away. "I responded to a call." "You escalated a call based on bias," Darius corrected. "And you enjoyed it. I saw the way you twisted her arm." Darius turned to the cabin, addressing the stunned audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice projected clearly to the back of economy, "I apologize for the delay. My name is Darius Sterling. I am the reason this plane has no fuel. I am the reason the AC is off. And I am the reason you will all be missing your connections." A murmur went through the crowd. Some people looked angry, others awestruck. "However," Darius continued, "I am a man who pays for his inconveniences. Everyone on this flight will receive a full refund paid personally by me, plus a $5,000 voucher for future travel on any airline that isn't Vista Skies, because Vista Skies will not be operating for the foreseeable future." He turned back to Calloway. "Is the CEO on the line yet?" Calloway nodded, handing his squawking radio over. He's screaming, sir." Darius took the radio. He didn't put it to his ear. He held it in front of him, pressing the talk button. "Richard," Darius said calmly to the Vista Skies CEO on the other end. "It's Darius. We have a problem." The voice that crackled back over the radio was frantic. Richard Vance, the CEO of Vista Skies, sounded like a man watching his house burn down. "Darius, what the hell are you doing?" Richard's voice echoed through the silent first-class cabin. "You can't just cut the fuel lines. We have 40 planes stranded on the tarmac at JFK alone. We're bleeding millions by the minute. This is breach of contract." Darius smiled coldly. "Actually, Richard, if you read Section 4, Paragraph C of our supply agreement, Sterling Petrodynamics reserves the right to suspend service immediately in the event of security threats against executive personnel or their immediate family. Your staff just arrested my daughter. That is a security threat." "What?" Richard paused. "Your daughter Maya. What is she doing there?" "She was sitting in seat 1A, Darius said, his eyes drilling into Brenda, "until your lead flight attendant decided a black girl in a hoodie couldn't possibly afford the seat, refused to check her ticket, and had her assaulted by the police." There was a long silence on the radio, then a quiet, horrified, "Jesus. I am standing here looking at the bruises on her wrists, Richard." Darius continued, his voice dropping an octave. So here is where we stand. I am cancelling the master fuel contract, not just for JFK, for Heathrow, LAX, and Dubai. Effective immediately. You have 0 fuel reserves. Your airline is grounded globally. Darius, wait, Richard pleaded. Don't do this. We can fix this. Please think about the shareholders. Think about the partnership. I am thinking about my daughter, Darius snapped. You want the fuel back? You want your planes to fly? Yes. Name your terms. First, Darius said, pointing at Brenda, who was now openly weeping into her hands. Ms. Purvis, I want her fired, not suspended, not reprimanded, terminated for cause effective immediately, with a permanent mark on her record, preventing her from working in aviation again. I want to hear you say it. Calloway held the radio up so Brenda could hear. Do it, Calloway. Richard's voice came through harsh and immediate. Purvis is gone. Take her badge. Get her off my plane. Brenda let out a sob. No, I have 25 years. You can't do this. You did it to yourself, Darius said without pity. Give Mr. Calloway your badge. Trembling, Brenda unpinned the silver wings from her uniform, the wings she had worn so proudly just an hour ago to humiliate Maya. She handed them to Calloway, her hands shaking violently. Second, Darius continued, the pilot, Captain Jacobs. The pilot stuck his head out of the cockpit, looking terrified. You let this happen, Darius said to him. You are the captain. Your authority overrides the cabin crew. You saw a passenger being harassed, and you hid in the cockpit because you didn't want a delay. You failed to protect your passengers. I didn't know, Jacobs stammered. You knew, Darius said. Richard, I want the flight crew suspended pending a full discrimination investigation, and I want a public apology issued by Vista Skies within the hour, detailing exactly what happened here. Done, Richard said instantly. It's done, Darius. Anything else? One more thing, Darius said. He turned to Mr. Henderson in seat 1B. The hedge fund manager was sweating profusely, trying to make himself small. Mr. Henderson, Darius said pleasantly, you seem to be a busy man. You were very vocal about my daughter being trash that needed to be taken out. Henderson swallowed hard. I was just stressed. I didn't mean... Darius looked at the phone in his hand. I just had my team run a quick check on the passenger manifest. You work for Capital One Investments, don't you? Managing the pension funds. Yes, Henderson squeaked. Sterling Petrodynamics is your firm's largest client, Darius said. We hold about $400 million in assets with your group. Henderson's face went grey. Mr. Sterling, please. It was a heat-of-the-moment thing. I don't trust my assets with people who lack judgment, Darius said. He put the phone to his ear. Sarah, pull the funds from Capital One. All of them. Move them to JP Morgan. Yes, today. No, Henderson gasped, standing up. You can't do that. I'll lose my bonus. I'll lose my job. You should have thought about that before you cheered on the assault of a teenager, Darius said coldly. Sit down and be quiet. Darius turned back to Maya. The cabin was silent. The justice had been swift, brutal, and absolute. The systemic dismantling of everyone who had wronged her was complete. Are you okay to walk, sweetie? Darius asked, his voice softening instantly. I think so, Maya said. She felt weak, the adrenaline crash hitting her hard. We aren't flying Vista Skies, Darius said. My jet is fixed. It's waiting at the private terminal. We're going to London on our own terms. He put a protective arm around her shoulder. As they turned to leave, Officer Brock blocked the aisle one last time. He looked desperate, realizing the gravity of the threat Darius had made earlier. "Mr. Sterling," Brock said, his voice cracking. "About the lawsuit. Look, I have a family. I was just following the flight attendant's lead. Can we discuss this?" Darius stopped. He looked Brock up and down with a look of pure disgust. "You put your hands on my child," Darius said. "You didn't ask questions. You just saw a target. You have a family, good. Go home and tell them you're a bully who picked the wrong fight. You'll be hearing from my lawyers in the morning." Darius guided Maya past the officer, past the weeping Brenda, and out onto the jet bridge. Behind them, the chaos was just beginning. Passengers were cheering. Calloway was shouting orders to remove Brenda from the premises. Mr. Henderson was frantically dialing his boss, screaming into his phone. And Officer Brock stood alone in the aisle, the color draining from his face as he realized his career was over. But the story wasn't over yet. The video of the incident recorded by the boy in row 15 had just finished uploading to Twitter, and within minutes the world would see exactly what happened on Flight 409. By the time Darius and Maya stepped onto the warm beige carpeting of the Sterling Petrodynamics, private Gulfstream G650, the world below them had already begun to burn. Maya sank into the plush cream leather seat, the adrenaline finally leaving her system, replaced by a deep, aching exhaustion. A flight attendant, one who knew her name and treated her with genuine kindness, brought her a warm blanket and a cup of peppermint tea. Darius sat across from her, his phone buzzing incessantly on the mahogany table between them. He ignored it, watching his daughter. "You're safe," he said quietly. "We're wheels up in 5 minutes." "I just wanted to go to London," Maya said, staring into her tea. "I didn't want any of this." "I know," Darius replied, his voice hardening slightly. "But they chose this, and now they have to live with it." Down on the ground, the reality of Darius's words was taking shape in the form of a 14-minute video file. The passenger in row 15, a college student named Leo, hadn't just recorded the arrest. He had recorded everything: Brenda's condescending tone, the refusal to look at the ticket, the arrival of Officer Brock, the brutal manhandling, and finally the explosive arrival of Darius Sterling. Leo uploaded the video to TikTok and Twitter with the caption, "Vista Skies Flight 409, racist flight attendant, and power-tripping cop. Assault innocent black teen, surprise ending, her dad owns the fuel. Justice for Seat 1A. Boycott Vista Skies." The algorithm caught it instantly. In the first hour, it had 10,000 views. By the time the Sterling jet reached cruising altitude over the Atlantic, it had 3 million. The internet does not forgive, and it certainly does not forget. The court of public opinion was in session, and the verdict was unanimous. In a small apartment in Queens, Brenda Purvis sat in her kitchen staring at her iPad with horror. She had been escorted out of the airport by security, stripped of her credentials and told to go home. She thought she could spin this. She thought she could file a grievance with the union. Then she opened Twitter. Her face was everywhere. Screenshots of her sneering at Maya were being turned into memes. Her full name had been doxed within 45 minutes. Her LinkedIn profile was being bombarded with thousands of comments. "Is this the lady who bullies teenagers? Hope you enjoyed your power trip, Karen. Enjoy the unemployment line. Imagine working 25 years just to throw it away because you couldn't handle a girl in a hoodie." Brenda's phone began to ring. It wasn't her friends. It was reporters. The Daily Mail, TMZ, CNN. They were camped outside her apartment building. She peeked through the blinds and saw the flashbulbs popping. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. She had built her entire identity around being the queen of the cabin, the senior attendant who commanded respect. Now she was a global symbol of bigotry. Across town, the fallout for Officer Brock was even more severe. The NYPD and the Port Authority Police Department, PAPD, were already in damage control mode. The video clearly showed Brock escalating a non-violent situation. There was no resistance from Maya. There was only aggression from him. Brock sat in the office of his precinct commander, Captain O'Malley. The silence in the room was deafening. "You didn't ask to see her ticket?" O'Malley asked, his voice deceptively calm. "The flight attendant said she was trespassing." Brock defended himself, though he looked small in the chair. "I followed the complainant's directive." "You twisted the arm of a 90-pound girl," O'Malley said, turning a laptop screen around to show a freeze frame of the video. "Look at this, Brock. Look at the torque on her shoulder. That is excessive force. That is a lawsuit." "I can explain." "You can't," O'Malley snapped. Darius Sterling's lawyers just sent a letter of intent to the commissioner. They aren't just suing the department. They are suing you personally for civil rights violations. They are going after your pension. They are going after your house. Brock felt the blood drain from his face. "My pension. You're on unpaid leave, effective immediately," O'Malley said, sliding a badge and gun tray across the desk. "Put them in the tray. Internal Affairs is already opening a file. And honestly, Brock, with this video, you'll be lucky if you don't do jail time." But the financial carnage was perhaps the most spectacular. Vista Skies was a publicly traded company. As news of the fuel embargo and the viral video hit the wires, the market reacted with brutal efficiency. Investors hate uncertainty, and they hate scandal even more. At 3:00 p.m., Vista Skies stock ticker, VSK, was trading at $4,500 a share. By 4:30 p.m., after Darius's fuel freeze announcement leaked to CNBC, the stock plummeted to $3,200. By market close, the next day after the video had been viewed 50 million times, the stock was trading at $18.50. Billions of dollars in market cap evaporated in 24 hours. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Richard, the CEO, tried to save his job, blaming the incident on rogue employees. But the board had seen the video. They had seen the fuel contracts cancelled. They knew that without Sterling Petrodynamics, their planes were effectively paperweights. By the time Maya landed in London, the world had changed. She wasn't just a victim. She was a hero, and her tormentors were watching their lives crumble in real time. The aftermath of Flight 409 did not happen in a vacuum. It happened on screens on stock tickers and in the sweating, frantic boardrooms of Wall Street. While Maya slept off the exhaustion of the flight in a penthouse suite at the Savoy in London, the ecosystem of Vista Skies was disintegrating with the violence of a collapsing star. The video shot by the student in row 15 had transcended social media trend status. It had become a global news event. CNN was running a chyron that read, "Sky Rage, Racial Profiling Accusation Grounds Fleet." At the New York Stock Exchange, the opening bell the next morning rang like a funeral toll for Vista Skies. The sell-off was panicked and absolute. Institutional investors, seeing the cancellation of the Sterling Petrodynamics fuel contracts, dumped the stock in millions of blocks. The ticker symbol VSK flashed red, dropping 15% in the first 10 minutes of trading. Trading was halted by the circuit breakers, paused for volatility, only to reopen and plummet another 10%. By noon, $2 billion of market capitalization had been wiped off the books. The boardroom execution. In the executive headquarters of Vista Skies in Dallas, the atmosphere was toxic. Richard Cole, the CEO who had frantically tried to negotiate with Darius over the radio, sat at the head of a mahogany table that felt like a chopping block. The board of directors was present. They were not smiling. "You let a 20-year veteran flight attendant arrest the daughter of our single largest supplier," the chairman of the board said. His voice was quiet, which made it terrifying. "And then you allowed the situation to escalate until the police were assaulting a minor on a live feed." "I didn't know it was her," Richard pleaded, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief that cost more than Brenda's car. "Purvis went rogue. I've already terminated her." "Purvis is a symptom, Richard. You are the disease," the chairman replied, sliding a black folder across the table. "The fuel embargo is indefinite. Darius Sterling refuses to take your calls. He says he will only speak to new leadership. Do you understand what that means?" Richard stared at the folder. Inside was his resignation letter, already typed, awaiting his signature. "If I sign this, I want my golden parachute," Richard stammered, trying to salvage his dignity. "My severance package is worth $40 million. Clause 14B, the chairman said coldly. "Gross negligence causing reputational harm. You are being terminated for cause, Richard. There is no package. There is no parachute. You leave with what is in your pockets. Security will escort you out." The deposition of Brenda Purvis. 3 months later, the legal machinery of Darius Sterling began to grind the bones of those who had wronged his daughter. The venue was a sterile, freezing conference room in downtown Manhattan. Brenda Purvis sat in a hard leather chair. She looked like a ghost of her former self. The immaculately sprayed blonde helmet of hair was gone, replaced by a messy, graying ponytail. She wore a cheap cardigan and no makeup. Since the incident, she hadn't just lost her job. She had lost her place in society. She couldn't go to the grocery store without being recognized. She had been evicted from her apartment after her landlord claimed her presence was causing a disturbance due to the paparazzi. Sitting opposite her was Jessica Pearson, the lead litigator for Sterling Roth and Partners. Jessica was a shark in a silk blouse, known for tearing defendants apart without raising her voice. A camera recorded the deposition. "Ms. Purvis," Jessica began, adjusting her glasses. "Let's revisit the moment you approached seat 1A. You stated in your initial incident report, which you filed immediately after the arrest, that the passenger appeared, and I quote, threatening. Can you elaborate?" Brenda shifted uncomfortably. She wouldn't listen. She had her hood up. "Is a hood a weapon, Ms. Purvis?" Jessica asked. "No, but is a hood a verbal threat?" "No." "Did she stand up and advance on you?" "No," Brenda whispered. "She was sitting." "So?" Jessica leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Brenda's like a laser. "You have a seated teenage girl wearing headphones playing a video game, and you determined she was threatening. Why was it the fabric of her sweatshirt? Or was it the color of her skin?" "I'm not a racist," Brenda blurted out, tears welling up. "I have black friends. I just thought she was scamming the seat because you couldn't conceive of a world where a young black woman could afford a $12,000 ticket." Jessica finished the sentence for her. "That is the definition of bias, Ms. Purvis. And because of that bias, you triggered a police response that resulted in physical assault." Jessica slid a piece of paper across the table. "What is this?" Brenda asked, her hands shaking. "That is a list of damages," Jessica said. My client is suing you for defamation, emotional distress, and loss of reputation. We are asking for $5 million. I don't have $5 million, Brenda sobbed. I have $400 in my checking account. I'm on food stamps. We know, Jessica said, her voice devoid of pity. We don't expect to collect the money. We expect a judgment, a permanent legal record stating that you are a liar and a bigot. This judgment will follow you for the rest of your life. Every background check, every job application, every rental agreement. You will never hide from this. Brenda put her head in her hands and wept. The queen of the cabin was dethroned, bankrupt, and broken. The disassembly of Officer Brock. While Brenda faced financial ruin, Officer Brock faced the end of his identity. The Internal Affairs hearing room at the Port Authority was a grey, windowless box. Brock sat alone at a small metal table. Usually, the police union representative would be sitting next to him, fighting tooth and nail. Today, the chair beside Brock was empty. The union had reviewed the tape. They had seen the public outcry. They had seen the political pressure from the mayor's office. They had cut Brock loose to save the rest of the department. Across from Brock sat 3 high-ranking captains and a representative from the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Officer Brock, the presiding captain said, we have reviewed the body cam footage. At timestamp 1402, you initiated physical contact with the subject. At 1403, you applied a wrist lock control hold. The subject was not pulling away. She was not striking you. Why did you apply the lock? She was passively resisting. Brock grunted, though the fight had left his eyes. She didn't stand up fast enough. She was buckled in, the captain corrected. You yanked her before she could unbuckle. That's not resistance, Brock. That's battery. The captain opened a file. The Sterling family has filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against you personally, stripping your qualified immunity. The department is not indemnifying you. That means you are on your own for the legal fees and the settlement. Brock swallowed hard. I have a mortgage. My kid is starting college. Not on a cop's pension, he isn't, the captain said. Because you don't have one anymore. You are terminated effective immediately. You are stripped of your rank and your benefits. And Brock. Brock looked up. The district attorney is moving forward with assault charges. You're looking at 6 months to a year in county jail. You better hope they put you in protective custody, because ex-cops don't do well in general population. Brock stood up, his legs shaking. He reached for his badge, the shield he had hidden behind for 20 years, to bully people, and placed it on the table. It made a hollow clack sound. When he got home that afternoon, his key didn't work. His wife had changed the locks. She left a note saying she couldn't live with the shame or the debt he was about to bring down on them. She had taken the kids to her sisters in Ohio. Brock sat on his front stoop, head in his hands, watching the rain fall, a king of nothing, the audit of Mr. Henderson. Perhaps the most surgical destruction was reserved for Mr. Henderson, the hedge fund manager, in seat 1B, who had laughed and called Maya trash. Darius Sterling didn't sue Henderson. That would have been too messy. Darius simply made a phone call to an old friend at the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Just take a look at his trades, Darius had said, specifically the shorts he made on airline stocks right before he boarded the plane. The SEC auditors arrived at Capital One Investments at 9:00 a.m. on a Monday. By 11:00 a.m., they had seized Henderson's computer. It turned out Henderson had a habit of front-running, using client money to make personal trades before executing the big block orders. It was illegal, it was stupid, and he had been doing it for years. Henderson was in the middle of a client lunch when his credit card was declined. He tried a second card. Declined. His phone rang. It was his boss. "Don't come back to the office, Jerry," the boss said. "Security has already packed your box. The FBI is waiting in the lobby." FBI, Henderson squeaked, dropping his fork. "Insider trading, fraud, embezzlement. It's all over, Jerry. And by the way, that Sterling account you lost, that was the tip of the iceberg. You're finished on Wall Street. You couldn't get a job as a bank teller after this." Henderson sat in the expensive restaurant, surrounded by the high society he so desperately wanted to impress, and realized he couldn't even pay for his Cobb salad. The architect of revenge. 2 years passed. The dust settled. The lawsuits were closed. Vista Skies had rebranded Desperate to shed the stigma of the Flight 409 incident. As part of their rehabilitation image, they announced a massive contest, the redesign of their flagship first-class lounge and terminal at JFK. They wanted it to be a symbol of new beginnings. They invited architectural firms from all over the world to submit blind proposals. The board would choose the winner, based solely on the design, not the name attached to it. The winning submission was a masterpiece. It was titled The Open Sky Project. It featured a radical use of glass and steel, creating a structure that felt weightless. The flow of the terminal was designed to eliminate lines, eliminate barriers, and create a sense of total transparency. It was beautiful, democratic, and breathtakingly expensive. Vista Skies announced the winner with a massive gala. The press was there. The new board of directors was there. "And now," the announcer boomed, "please welcome the lead architect of the winning firm, MS Designs." The doors at the back of the stage opened. A woman walked out. She was 21 years old now. She wore a power suit that fit her like armor. Her hair was braided in intricate regal rows. She walked with the confidence of someone who owned the building. The board of directors froze. The murmurs started in the crowd. It was Maya Sterling. She stepped to the podium, adjusting the microphone. She looked out at the executives of Vista Skies, the people who had inherited the mess, the people who were desperately trying to pay her to fix their image. "Thank you," Maya said, her voice smooth and commanding. 2 years ago, in this very airport, I was told I didn't belong. I was told I was trash that needed to be taken out. I was dragged through these halls in handcuffs because the architecture of this airline was built on exclusion and bias." The room was deadly silent. "So," Maya continued, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips, "I decided to tear it down and build something new." She pressed a button on the remote. The screen behind her lit up with the render of the new terminal. "This is the Sterling Pavilion," she announced. "It is designed so that security is invisible, but effective. It is designed so that first class is not a fortress, but a service. And most importantly, it is designed with a mandatory clause in the construction contract." She looked directly at the new CEO of Vista Skies. 50% of the contractors, vendors, and staff hired to build and run this terminal must come from underrepresented communities. We are not just building a lounge. We are building a pipeline for people who look like me to be the ones running the airport, not just being arrested in it. The CEO looked nervous, but he had no choice. The cameras were rolling. The contract was already signed. If he backed out now, the PR backlash would destroy the airline permanently. He started to clap, slowly at first, then faster. The room followed suit. Maya watched them applaud. She saw the fear in their eyes mixed with respect. They weren't clapping because they liked her. They were clapping because they feared her. They realized that the girl in the hoodie had grown up to be a titan. The final twist. After the gala, Maya walked through the construction site of the new terminal. It was late, and the skeleton of the building was silhouetted against the night sky. She heard a noise near the security fence. A security guard was there doing his rounds. He was an older man, limping slightly, wearing a uniform that was too tight. He was shining a flashlight into the dark corners. Maya squinted. There was something familiar about the slump of his shoulders, the way he held his head. She walked closer. The guard turned around, startled. "Sorry, ma'am, the site is closed. You need to—" The beam of the flashlight hit Maya's face. The guard froze. The light shook in his hand. It was Brock. He looked 10 years older. His face was lined with stress, his eyes hollow. He wasn't the hulking, arrogant officer anymore. He was a broken man, working the night shift for minimum wage. Maya stood there looking at him. She was the lead architect, the multi-millionaire, the heiress. He was the hired help. "Miss Sterling," Brock whispered. He looked like he wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. I didn't know this was your site." "It's all my site, Brock," Maya said softly. Brock looked down at his boots. "I'm sorry," he croaked. "I never said it. But I'm sorry. I lost everything." Maya looked at him. She thought about the pain in her shoulder that still flared up when it rained. She thought about the humiliation of the walk of shame down the aisle. She could have him fired right now. One word to the construction foreman, and Brock would be unemployed again. It would be the final twist of the knife. Maya took a breath. She reached into her purse. Brock flinched as if expecting a weapon. Maya pulled out a business card. It wasn't for her firm. It was for a legal aid clinic that helped former convicts and disgraced officers find rehabilitation and mental health counseling. "You look tired, Brock," Maya said. "Get some help. Do better for your kids." She placed the card on a stack of drywall near his hand. "Keep the site secure," she said, turning away. "I don't want any trespassers." Maya walked away into the night, the sound of her heels clicking on the concrete, the sound of progress. She didn't look back. She didn't need to destroy him anymore. He was already a ghost. And she had an empire to build. And that is the incredible, true-to-life story of how one moment of prejudice brought down an entire airline. It serves as a powerful reminder. Never judge a book by its cover, and certainly never judge a passenger by their hoodie. You never know who they are or who their father might be. In a world where cameras are everywhere, karma is faster than ever. Brenda Brock and Henderson learned the hard way that arrogance has a price, and sometimes that price is everything you own. Maya turned her trauma into triumph, proving that success is the best revenge. What would you have done if you were in Maya's shoes? Do you think the punishment for the flight attendant and the officer was enough? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching.